Hey everyone, Scott Conant here. Welcome to my home. I hope you enjoy cooking with me today. We're gonna have a good time. We are gonna make a sun-dried tomato guanciale Robiola Arancini. That's a lot of vowels. It's a lot of vowels. So it's delicious. Everyone loves arancini. There's something about arancini that just exudes a certain excitement for everyone when you say that it's on a menu. They're easy to pop in your mouth. They're a lot of fun. We're going to make them a decent size, not too big, not too small, someplace in the middle today. Let's start with a little bit of guanciale, shall we? So guanciale, of course, the jowls of a pig. These are nicely marinated. I'm going to slice this really thin. It's been sitting here, so it's kind of tempered a little bit. If you keep it really cold, it'll be a little bit easier to slice. But this is, I mean, it's all fat, and it is cured deliciousness. I just love guanciale, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to chop it up a little more. This is, I love the scent of it. There's just something about it that is so beautiful. We're going to render this out nicely. Of course, guanciale, normally, really known for its use in a matriciana or a carbonara. Carbonara should have guanciale. A lot of people substitute pancetta. That is, it's legal, I would say. You could do that. It has nothing to do with the same flavor profile. There's something about this spice mixture on a guanciale that is just super special. But some people even use bacon. The smoke on a bacon has nothing to do with anything. If you're going to substitute bacon for it, I would say use an unsmoked bacon. That way you get the beautiful fat content, but you're not going to be overwhelmed with the smoke. So best thing to do is just find guanciale, honestly. It's delicious. It's beautiful. So I'm chopping this up very fine. As you can see, I have nice little bits here. I have a pot on the ready. First thing we're going to do, I got the guanciale sliced. We're going to make sure that we have some hot stock here. It's got to be very hot. It's got to be almost at a boil, just below, just at like a simmer. It's important. Also have ready a tray with some parchment paper or a silpat pad or something like that. That's going to be really important to getting this done properly as well. So the first things we're going to do is we're going to render out this guanciale. I'm going to add a little bit of olive oil just to get the rendering process started. I'm going to add the guanciale to that. That's at a medium heat. I'm going to add that. Medium heat. While that guanciale is cooking, I have a couple shallots, a couple pieces of garlic here. Let's do this. Good. You could hear it starting to render. Very fine dice on the shallot. Couple cloves of garlic we're going to put in there afterwards also. So shallots, garlic, guanciale, touch of olive oil. We're going to make a beautiful risotto, and then after the risotto is made, we're going to lay it out on that sheet tray. We are going to talk about how to stuff it and bread it and then deep fry it. So there's a lot of things we're going to be doing with this recipe, but trust me, it is all worth it. Another thing that you can do, if you have the wherewithal, if you want to, is you could actually just make this risotto and then serve it, and anything left over is a great opportunity to make these beautiful arancini with. So it's kind of two recipes in one. Not kind of. It is two recipes in one. All right, shallots going. I could hear that guanciale needs a little bit of movement in the pan. Just called out to me. So that's coming along nicely. Again, that beautiful rendering of the fat. It just smells so good. That is rendering out. And I'll say I'm going to let that guanciale cook for a minute, and then while I cut this garlic as well. So, okay. So I'm going to mince this. Minced garlic, chopped shallots, guanciale going. I have some risotto. Now when I make risotto, I prefer violone nano rice, also known as campanini rice. You can get it on the internet. It's readily available in most places. If you can't find it, then you'll have to do what I did. And today, I'm using regular arborio rice. So there's nothing wrong with it. We all have our preferences, right? It's violone nano is something I kind of came up utilizing and using. I have a preference for it, but by all means, any risotto is going to be fine. So, all right. Shallots and garlic in the pan with the guanciale. You can see that beautiful color on the guanciale itself coming together nicely. And yes, there's a lot of cure on that guanciale, but I am going to add a touch of salt to it to help utilize that salt content to render out some of the inherent juices of the shallot and the garlic. So that'll help out, draw out the moisture. All right, so that is cooking nicely. Look at that, beautiful. If you feel like adding a little bit of crushed red pepper, you can do that. I like that process of adding crushed red pepper at this point because it really helps with, it helps kind of bring out some of that spice. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. A little bit of that there. In the meantime, while that is cooking, we have the risotto. I'm going to add the risotto to this. I'm going to toast everything together. While that's toasting, now what I like to do when you're toasting the rice is literally just add a touch of whole butter to it. Now the reason why I do this is I feel like the whole butter does two things. Number one, it creates a nice beurre noisette, a nice hazelnut flavor with the toast. Also, it adds a little bit of the milk solids inside the butter to help cook the garlic and the shallots all the way through. For me, you may or may not know about my dislike of onion flavor. It's really important to me that the onions are cooked all the way through and really almost start that sweet caramelization process with the toasting of the rice itself. So the milk solids do a couple different things there. That flavor profile is beautiful, but the milk solids add some moisture which help cook those shallots all the way through as well. So that's a nice little thing that I like to do. It is definitely not the traditional way of making risotto at all. So that is cooking and toasting. They always say that if you don't toast these rice kernels, they will never be as al dente as they should be, because you really want to toast the hull of that risotto in order when you cook it. Otherwise, it becomes a little bit too starchy, right? And the toasting of those starches on the exterior kind of tame them down a little bit, create an exterior hull almost, and then it's allowed to cook all the way through when you're boiling it. Also, you notice that we're boiling this stock. We have it at a simmer. It's very hot. That way, when we're adding the stock, it doesn't drop the temperature of the risotto, right, as it's cooking. And then what we would have to do if it was cold stock or room temperature stock, you would have to allow it to heat up again, and thereby creating a gummy exterior to the risotto. So it's really important that what you're doing is agitating this rice, making it nice and toasty, but also once you start adding liquid to it, what happens is, I'm going to turn it down a touch. What happens is you start to stir it vigorously. It agitates the starch is released, and that starch content with the nice liquid creates an emulsion. So you have the fat, the liquid, and the actual starch create creates a beautiful emulsion for your risotto. A lot of stuff going on here. A lot of deliciousness. So we are toasting that up. That looks like it's ready to go. I'm going to add some white wine at this point. That white wine adds a nice acidity to the rice. And by the way, at any point, if I'm getting ahead of you, just press pause, catch up, and then you can press play again. It'll be fine. So that's the benefit of the Food Network kitchen. It goes on your time, not mine. It's good. So that is reducing nicely. You can see the white wine is reducing there. So I know when to add this white wine because the rice is starting to turn a little bit, just a little toasty color. And so that's when the rice is ready to go, ready for the white wine. I want to reduce it enough. Now this is a really important point, right? I'm reducing that wine until it's almost dry, but simultaneously, if you notice, we're stirring it the whole time because we really want to get those starches out. So if you look inside this pot, right now you could start to see that emulsion forming. You can see that starch being released, the fat starting to emulsify together with the liquid and the starch. And that's how we know we're starting a great foundation for a risotto. If you don't have that, if you don't get that little initial stage and foundation, you're going to lose your risotto later on. It won't be emulsified properly. So that's why we never want to reduce it too much so that it breaks, but we also never want to add too much liquid that it won't come together like a nice risotto does, like that beautiful creamy starchiness. Right? And that's why we add the liquid in stages. Because then as it reduces and cooks and we stir it, it's creating more of an emulsification. It's creating more of that starch being released. And you can see that the whole way. And you know, at the end of the day, it's just delicious. It's delicious stuff. It's good. I'm only mildly biased, by the way. So I just want to taste it. I taste it. And what you'll taste right now is you'll taste that nice pop of acidity, the beautiful depth of the caramelized, you know, that slight caramelization and browning of the shallots as well. So it has a nice sweetness to it. You get that nice porkiness from the guanciale as well. It's just, you know, it's a thing of beauty. It's a thing of beauty. Great. Nice foundation of flavor. That broth is exactly where we want it to be. It has a nice salt content. It's not too salty. It's not bland either. So it's important to find the balance here. So we're going to keep stirring this. Again, it's a medium-low heat. Not too, you know, it's at a nice simmer here. It's not at a rough boil. If you start adding too much liquid to a risotto, it's at a boil and you start to see a starchy, it comes to a starchy boil, you'll know that it needs more fat. So take that opportunity to add a little bit of olive oil to it, just a touch, not a lot, just so it starts to coat, the olive oil will coat the starches inside the rice. And that by coating them, it becomes that more unctuousness, that beautiful palatable flavor, that smoothness on the palate, I would say, that you're meant to have with a risotto. And really, when you're making an arancino like this, one arancino, two arancini. So when you're making arancini like this, you really want as much of that starch as possible, because then when you fry it, you create a ball, you bread it, deep fry it, you take a bite, that starchy liquid that's on the exterior of the risotto is then a beautiful, almost sauce that the rice is suspended in. And then you get to the creamy Robiola cheese center that we're creating here. I mean, there's just a lot of good stuff going on. Good stuff. That's hot. All right, so a little bit more liquid. And your basic risotto ratio. People always ask me for a great recipe for a risotto. You know, the best thing that I can say to you is there is no recipe. There's a ratio, and it's a 4-to-1 ratio for rice, for risotto rice, to broth. So take into consideration some of the other things that you may add to that rice may bring some liquid into the equation, or some rendering of liquid out of a particular ingredient. So it's really important to point out that it's not necessarily about the recipe, right? It's about the ratios. And when you're cooking for ratios, it's much easier to kind of create those. I know if I have to cook for 100 people and I have 100 ounces of rice, then I need 400 ounces of liquid, right? It's just an easy way to be able to do the math in my head, and then I can have the other things that I'm cooking with it readily available as well. But take into consideration that, yes, this rice is going to have other things like tomato paste that will add a little bit of vinegar. There's liquid content to that as well. So you need to take that slight adjustment into consideration with the ratios that you're cooking. So we're just going to keep stirring this, letting it boil. Again, that agitation is what creates that starch content being released from the rice and that nice creaminess that we're creating. The creaminess, the starch with the fat, with the liquid, all creates that beautiful texture of a risotto that everyone loves. I have another class of risotto on the Food Network Kitchen, which you can check out. It is a risotto with egg and parmigiano, which is really good. Sometimes I do that with truffles on top if you're so inspired, or even finish it with a little bit of truffle butter sometimes, or if you have truffles lying around the house, some truffles shaved over the top, either white or black. It's a good recipe, and it's fun to cook. And I feel like that egg that you finish the risotto with in that class is just a thing of beauty. It's nice to it's really creates a beautiful liaison and emulsion inside this rice also. So, but here, of course, inside we have the shallots, we have the garlic, we have the white wine, the guanciale, the rice itself, the arborio rice in this case, and of course the chicken stock. If you want to substitute a different stock, you can easily do that as well. Again, as I said, you can also add any other pork product inside here. If you want some bacon or a pork belly or whatever the case may be, you could do that. You could do that as well. It's going to change the flavor profile. It won't exactly clearly. It won't be the same, but it'll be great. Risotto will take about 18 to 22 minutes once you add the liquid to it. So in the case when I added the white wine, that point it'll be 18 to 22 minutes, that cooking time. So you could see that moisture content. We are not ready to add any more liquid yet. There's plenty of liquid in this rice, and it's reducing down, and it's creating those nice starches. Those nice starches are being released through the stirring. That's why you stir risotto, so that those starches are released. If you look in, just to give you a clue as to when you're meant to add that other, the other bit of broth, you want this to dry out a little bit more than what it is. But if you run your spoon through here and you see how that divide is created, that pool of liquid kind of separates a little bit between the rice. When it gets, I would say this right now is not ready to go yet. You could see there's still a little bit of residual liquid there. But again, you don't want it to separate, meaning you don't want so much liquid to be boiled out that the fat separates from the rice and the liquid. So we're almost there. It's not quite ready, but you'll see that separation as I drag the spoon through the risotto. When it gets to a certain point, it's going to stay apart a little bit longer, and that's when you have to start adding more liquid. Yeah, we're almost there. I think we're just about at the point where we got to add more liquid. If you notice that, see that, the way it stays apart for a longer period of time, that means it's ready for a little bit more liquid. I'm adding about 4 ounces of liquid at a time. So it's going to cook. It's still cooking. It's going to go a little longer. I'm going to keep stirring. Nice. This looks great. It's coming together. Good times. While that's cooking, in the meantime, I'm going to take some of these sun-dried tomatoes and chop them up. I have some tomato paste we're going to add to this. You can also, if you can find estratto di pomodoro, which is a tomato extract. It's really a specialty, beautiful product from Sicily. It's one of my favorite tomato products. It has nothing to do with tomato paste. It's more of a concentrate, I would say. That when you add some of that extract, tomato extract, it absorbs whatever liquid is left, and it makes everything thicker. It's really just an amazing, magical product that has this beautiful depth of flavor, which is kind of unparalleled. That deep, beautiful tomato. So they puree the tomato and they leave it in the sun and they just let it dry down until it's like tar almost. It's absolutely stunning. Tomato tar. It sounds much less appealing than estratto di pomodoro, but the flavor is great, I swear. All right. So we're adding a little bit more liquid. This is going. Something tells me that's going to be the last bit of liquid that we add. Now, how do we know when it's done? Obviously, you take it out and you taste it, right? There's another way, and I want to talk about this as well because I think it's important. So when you can take a kernel out. I'm going to put it on right there, and then see how I see that grain of rice, the way it breaks apart. That means it's not quite cooked. When you end up with maybe 2 or 3 of these little bits, as opposed to 6 or 7 like are here, then you'll know that that rice is almost done, right? This is a little too al dente. These are things you learn when you're working on a line and you have to do 200 risotto in one night of individual portions. There's only so much of that stuff you could taste and eat. So you try to find different ways to figure out when the rice is perfectly done, and that's a nice little tip. While this is going, I have some Parmesan cheese here. I'm going to grate about a 1/4 cup. Good, 1/4 cup. I have 2 tablespoons of the sun-dried tomatoes. I'm going to put about a tablespoon of the tomato paste inside here. I'm going to add just a touch of vinegar also to make sure that those flavors sing, really draw out the natural sweetness and acidity of the tomato that's in here. I'm going to add a little bit of the tomato paste. I'm going to add the sun-dried tomatoes. Oh yeah, look at that. A touch of vinegar, just a splash of vinegar, maybe a tablespoon of vinegar. We don't want to add any more than that. And then, once we start to add this dairy, the risotto itself should see no more heat. Just so we know, right? We don't want to keep cooking it because it's going to create a completely different texture from the cheese itself. So this is a nice texture. You see how that beautiful starch content is there? I'm going to add a little bit more of this liquid just to adjust it accordingly. I'm going to shut the flame off. I'm going to add a little bit of butter. Beautiful. Once again, notice I add the butter that beautiful creaminess comes into play here. And then I'm going to add some Parmesan cheese. Boom. The final texture of this, there's an expression for it in Italian. They say alle onda, which means a wave. You want this to have a particular wave. So when I shake the pan like this, see that wave? That's what you want. A little alle onda. I used to work with a guy who every time he made risotto, he would yell, alle onda! And you know that the risotto was ready. It was a little kitchen humor. Yeah. So that's the wave that you want. Now, this is done. We will take this tray, which if you have parchment or in this case a silpat, you just want to lay this out and let it cool down. See that beautiful creaminess? And that's the texture you want, right? The risotto should hit the tray, hit the plate, and then just have a little bit of give. Right? That's the way you want it to live. See, it's almost like the rice is suspended in that delicious liquid. Absolutely delicious. Good stuff. So we're going to let this cool, and I will come back. I'm going to clean up this mess. We will come back, and we will fill these things. We'll talk about the accompaniments for them. We'll bread them, fry them, and then we're going to eat them even better. We'll be back. So we have the risotto. It is nicely cooled down. I have a scoop here, and I'm making these about the size of a golf ball. So you can make them smaller, you can make them larger. I personally have seen them in Italy very large. I make them in the restaurants very small because we're fancy like that. But this is what I'm going to do. I have this golf ball size ball. I'm going to take some of this Robiola cheese and I'm just going to put it in the center. Right? And then I am going to mold this. That's a little creamier than what I wanted. And we're going to mold this so that it is completely covered inside the rice ball. We're going to do a few of these, and then we're going to pop them inside the refrigerator for about 20 minutes or in the freezer for 10 minutes, whatever you think is best. But I think you get the gist of this here, that we're just taking a little bit of this cheese. Maybe I'll do a little less this time. And we're just going to put it in the center, right? Nice. And then kind of cover it all up nicely. All right. So we're going to do a bunch of these, and then we will, after they're in the refrigerator for a little while, cooling down, we will bread them, flour, egg, breadcrumb. I think the key to this breading procedure here is that we really want to make sure that we're using a very fine breadcrumb, not something very thick like a panko. So you want the fine breadcrumbs because it'll coat this really nicely. So here we go. One more time. Good. See that? So there's no windows, there's no, bits of the cheese showing. We're doing the best we can to kind of make it completely whole and nice. Obviously, the name arancini comes from an orange. So traditionally, they make them with a little bit of saffron inside, and that they say that once they're breaded, they look like little oranges. Those Italians are so clever. They have a name for everything. It's amazing. So arancini means little oranges, although there's no orange product inside this. Good. Good. See how nice and beautiful those are? If I do say so myself. You're doing great. I love it. Keep going. So if you don't have Robiola, You can use La Tour. You can use any kind of creamy triple cream cheese, brie, camembert. What I love about Robiola is that it is a combination of cow and sheep milk cheeses from Piedmont, from the north of Italy. But as I said, you can use, 100% cow milk. That's fine. Camembert, brie are perfectly acceptable, delicious cheeses. If you want to go with something like something that has more of a sheep's milk or a cow milk cheese, I would say you could do that. It should be creamy. That's what you want. You could even do a little mozzarella in the center of it, right? Why not? A little mozzarella is delicious. Who doesn't love that? So lots of options. The key, I would say, is just be happy with your choice. That's all. All right. We're going to do 2 more of these so you get the gist of what we're talking about. I'm going to add just a touch more. There we go. Good. Good. I'd say these are about the size of a meatball, about the size of a golf ball, give or take. Good. All right, last one for now. So I'm just going to pop these in the refrigerator or in the freezer, and then I'm going to come back and show you how to make the yogurt dipping sauce and the gremolata. We're going to make a little gremolata. This gremolata is going to be made with some lemon zest. So let's do this. Some lemon zest. I want to make sure that I'm getting the zest. If I go deeper than the zest, then I'm getting into the bitterness. And I think this is important to point out. I don't want to get into the bitterness of the pith, the white part. So that's why you really want to stay on the surface bit of that zest, because it is light and refreshing and adds a lot to whatever it is that you're making. So just to be clear, when people say the zest, it's not the pith. You don't want to go too deep down. You just want to get the beautiful oils and the perfume. To that, we're going to add about a half a cup of Parmesan cheese. So we'll grate it fresh. And I'm going to add a half a cup of chopped parsley also. And we're going to add some oil to that as well. So there we go. All right, so lemon zest from 1 lemon, Parmesan cheese, delicious. Obviously, this is more than what you're going to need. Feel free to cut this recipe in half if you want, or you can utilize it for other delicious things. I like to use gremolata on braised meats. I like to finish pastas with it sometimes, or ravioli, or if I'm roasting lamb, a little bit of this gremolata on top. Obviously, traditionally served with ossobuco. It's a delicious accompaniment for that. Okay. And I'm just going to chiffonade it, rough chop some of those larger bits that may have been missed. All right, perfect. So this is one of the accompaniments that I love to use. I'm going to add a pinch of salt to this as well. Not too much because the Parmesan cheese is inside there. And then we're just going to add enough olive oil to this to kind of bring it all together. Sometimes I'll take roasted garlic and add it directly to this. So here's about a 1/4 cup of olive oil. Just enough to bring it together. And that's a great accompaniment. Almost like a paste. I'm going to add a touch more olive oil here. Oh boy, delicious. There we go. Right, just that little bit of deliciousness there. See that? Awesome. Okay, good. Also, another accompaniment that I like with the arancini is I like to take a little yogurt, in this case, and I take some Aleppo pepper. I add a little bit of Aleppo to this. I've got about a cup of yogurt, little Aleppo pepper, and a pinch of salt, pinch and a half. And we are gonna just mix this around so it's really nicely done. Good. Okay. Aleppo pepper is a pepper, in this case, obviously Aleppo, it's from the Middle East, Aleppo like as in Syria. It is a beautiful, mildly spiced pepper that just has a really nice florality to it. Is florality a word? Is that a word? A florality? It is now. So it has a nice floral element to it. It has a good spice note, but not too much. And it really adds a lot to the dishes that you're cooking with. I like it as a juxtaposition to something like crushed red pepper, which has a nice flavor profile, good pepper flavor profile, but it also has a lot of spiciness to it. So the Aleppo is a little bit different. I would say it's a little more of a feminine touch, if you will. Okay, so now setting myself up for what we call the standard breading procedure, right? We have some all-purpose flour, we have eggs, and some breadcrumbs. If you want to season this any particular way, by all means, you can do that. With my breadcrumbs, with this particular dish, I feel like there's a lot of seasoning already in there. I don't feel like you need to add a lot, maybe a little bit of salt to the breadcrumbs. But beyond that, leave it to you. You can feel free to season these things. I'm just going to whisk up these eggs. So again, we call this standard breading procedure for a reason. The reason is that this is pretty much the way you bread things, right? Flour, egg, breadcrumb. You could go flour, egg, breadcrumb if you want a really deep coating on the exterior. But I think there's I think with these arancini, we really want them to have just a light coating on the outside. So I'll grab them from the freezer and we'll start breading them right away. I'm going to double check this oil. I want this oil to be at about 360. And it is. Here we go. Gloves on again. A little bit of flour. A little bit of egg. A little bit of flour. A little bit of egg. All right. I don't want to crowd this too much, but what I'm gonna do is keep one hand dry and one hand wet. So I don't want my fingers to be coated in these breadcrumbs like the arancini are. So, right here. And then I'm going to drop this right in the fryer. That's nice. Frying up nicely. How you guys doing? Everything good? Are you guys with this? You with me on this one? It's a thing of beauty. I'll never forget my first trip to Rome. I was 19 years old and walking through the streets eating supplì. It's memorable stuff, right? Memorable stuff. There we go. Look at these. So we're going to fry them nicely. Let me do these while we're at it. While those are frying, we'll have the other ones at the ready. Beautiful. You hear them frying up nicely. They have that great little crispness to them. We want to make sure that they are not getting overly fried and start to have the cheese in the center kind of burst out. We want to stay away from that. So I'm going to be a little bit cautious about how we're doing them. You can always finish them in the oven also. It's another little tip that you can make sure you fry them as long as you want them and then keep them warm so they don't burst. But look at those, huh? Wow. So what I like to do if I'm going to do these for a party is just do a little scoop of this. Yogurt on the bottom. They use that as kind of a stand for the arancini to sit inside. Just use a little bit of that gremolata on top. So these are about done. Look at that. Beautiful. Beautiful. Add these last few in here. Look at that. We want to fry them to make, as I said, to make sure that they're cooked all the way through. They should fry up in 4 or 5 minutes if the temperature on your oil is right. That oil has dropped down significantly to about 325 right now. So I'm going to turn this heat up a little bit to make sure that it's going to make, get back up to 350 pretty quickly. And it's moving pretty fast. So yeah. It's already up to 335, so it's getting there quickly. And by submerging them and creating that beautiful shell on the exterior, I mean, that's just a thing of beauty. You could also do these individually plated if you have a party or something that you want to serve as an appetizer. It's also a good thing to have. And again, a little bit of this gremolata on top. If you just want to do a little smidgen of it, kind of off to the side. And again, this could be something that if you let it cool down a little bit, it could be something that you pick up and eat like a past hors d'oeuvre, or it could be an appetizer with a fork and a knife, right? No judgment here. However you're happy, we're happy. All right? These are getting nice and golden as well. Beautiful. Good. Nice. The temperature is getting there. Beautiful. It's always a surprise to me, the things that I cook, and it actually comes out the way I envisioned it in my mind's eye. I mean, I've done this a million times, but it's always a different pressure. So anyway, sun-dried tomato Guanciale Robiola Arancini. I really hope you enjoyed as much as I do. I'm going to crack into one of these things so that I can enjoy it with you. How about that? Let's do this. I'm going to take it off of the. That's what I mean. Like this would be a great little appetizer as well. So I'm just going to cut it in half. You see that beautiful creamy center. The cheese is perfect. Let's see. Here you go. There is so much going on in this dish. There are so many layers of flavor. I really love that acidity of the gremolata and of the yogurt, the way they work with the fried exterior of the arancini. But then when you get into the center of that arancino, the way the rice, that beautiful starchiness of the rice, the texture of the rice, the creamy cheese, the tomato depth. I mean, that tomato paste adds so much. Wow. Oh yeah. I hope this becomes a holiday staple. I'm just going to sit here and eat all day. I forgot that I actually have to speak. I hope that this becomes a holiday staple for you the way it is in my home. It's a special dish, and it's even more special to share with the people that you love.